All right, we're here for blue, and I think this card, Aetherlune, looks pretty sweet. 2 blue and 4 colorless for a 4/5, and he has the standard lean abilities of colorless mana to pump his power, toughness, and then he can become unblockable, and also he can blink himself out. So this guy seems like a very solid creature. He is 6 mana, and you probably don't want too many 6 mana cards in your deck, but this guy seems pretty flexible. I guess the thing that Morphling had was that it could, I think, get flying. Or no, this guy gets unblockable. What am I saying? Yeah, he's insane. So I give him a 4.
Yeah, very very easy 4, if not a 4.5. I mean,
Yeah.
this is going to be a very solid finisher.
Yeah.
Very hard to kill due to his flicker ability, and then also just the fact that he can become an unblockable. I mean, if you pump him up all the way, he's an unblockable 8/1.
Right.
And that's going to kill them really quickly.
Yep. Yeah, so I think easy 4, potential 4.5, depending on the speed of the format. Hidden Strings for 1 colorless and 1 blue. You get a sorcery that says you may tap or untap target permanent, then you may tap or untap another target permanent, and it has Cipher. So this seems kind of reminiscent to Hands of Binding, I guess, with like a teeny bit of upside. Hands of Binding was just you may tap target creature, I think, right? And then it's ciphered.
Hands of Binding also had a very key clause where it stayed tapped for an extra turn, so you can actually lock down something.
True.
I think Hidden Strings is basically going to be unplayable because
That's a good point.
Unless you have an actual unblockable creature, it doesn't stop something.
Right. Yeah, because they just untap it on their turn. You're right. I guess this tries to get around that by letting you untap a creature so you get a little more defense, but even then, that just doesn't seem very exciting. Hands of Binding just seems flat out better. And Hands of Binding wasn't insane. So I'd give this card a 1 to 1.5.
Yeah, I would actually hope to not play it at all, so I'd probably give it 1.
Alright, Maze Glider, 5 colorless and a blue for a 3/5 flying that says multicolored creatures you control have flying. So I think out of all of the mazes, this one is probably the best. Flying is a pretty awesome ability. It's way better to give something flying than just to give it vigilance. And 3/5 is a pretty relevant body, and it has evasion by itself as well. So for 6 mana, I mean, if you remember, what was the 6 mana 3/3 flyer thing, the Azorius whatever, from Return to Ravnica? That was 6 mana, and that was a 3/3 flyer. This is a 3/5 flyer, right?
Oh, Asperia Skywatch.
Yeah, Asperia Skywatch. This is a 3/5 flyer, so you're just getting a better body. You don't get the detain, but then all your multicolored cards get flying. Like, that seems pretty good. I give this a 3 to a 3.5.
I'd probably give it a little less. At 6 mana, I think there are going to be a lot of 6-drops, and it's going to have to compete against some pretty heavy hitters. I'd probably actually give it a 2.5. I mean, it's not the worst, but at the same side, I don't want a lot of 6-drops.
I could just see this being a complete blowout. Like if you were Azorius or something like that, and you had a bunch of multicolored, like centaur healers and stuff, and then you just slam this down, and everything, has evasion. Maybe I'm valuing it too highly. Maybe 6 mana is, too high a price.
Centaur healer is also Selesnya.
Right.
And if you're Selesnya, I think most of the tokens are actually monocolored. So
the tokens are. That's true. Yeah.
So if you're Azorius and Selesnya,
maybe it has a better place than Izzet then.
It could be. I could see it being pretty good with Izzet.
Yeah. Or Rakdos, I guess, if you play like the Rakdos Izzet fusion.
Yeah. Again, I think it's more situational than you're giving it credit. It's great as a finisher to attack in that turn.
Right.
But as an overall 6 mana body, I'm not that impressed.
All right, fair enough. Okay, Mind Static, 3 colorless and a blue for an instant counter target spell unless its controller pays 6. This kind of seems miserably bad to me. I mean, you had Scatter Arc, which was a 4-mana counter that I don't think maybe I played it like once, and it was bad, and it cycled. I guess this can technically counter anything, but yeah, this does not seem very good.
Yeah, I think this is horrible. I mean, you also have Psychic Strike still from Gate Crash, which granted it's Dimir colors, but at least it's a unconditional counter and only costs 3.
Exactly. Yeah.
4-mana counter is basically not going to be good.
I think like in limited, like 3 mana is considered like the fair price for a counter spell, and then if there's maybe like a benefit on it, then you can slap on that 4th mana. But that benefit has to be pretty substantial for you to want to run a 4-mana counter spell.
Right.
Like Follow the Gavel, I think was 5, and it gained you some life. It had some uses. It wasn't amazing, but it worked. And really, the only reason why it worked was because you had already played out, your hand, and you were on the aggressive, and on your 5th turn, countering their thing was perfectly fine because you didn't have any more threats to play.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say this is a solid 1. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd give it a 1.
Murmuring Phantasm, colorless and a blue for an 0/5 defender. I'm not like super thrilled about this. Unless there's like a defender deck. Maybe, what's it, the stupid doorkeeper or whatever wants this thing. But, even in triple Return to Ravnica, when you could get triple doorkeepers, you would just prefer doorkeepers to this guy. Because that was like a 1/4 or a 0/4 or something, right?
Yeah, I think it was a 0/4.
Maybe it was a 0/5. I don't remember. But this guy does not seem great. Maybe 1.5 if you're like truly desperate.
I think it's going to come down to how aggressive the format is. I think it's going to be a very solid sideboard card against like a Boros Rakdos combination because you're just going to want bodies
you just
early.
Want blockers, yeah.
And a 0/5 is going to do a lot of work. It's very reminiscent of the Kraken Hatchling, the 1-mana 0/4, which and often would make your control deck, and at the very least it'd be a very powerful sideboard card. So that's kind of classic 1.5.
Yeah. All right, fair enough. Opal Gatekeepers, 3 colorless and a blue for a 2/4. When it enters the battlefield, if you control 2 or more gates, you may draw a card. So I guess this is the Gatekeeper line. I think, if you have a lot of gates, this guy goes way up in value. If you don't have any gates you want to play, he goes way down in value. I'd put him at like a 2 to 2.5. If you have a lot of gates, I could see wanting to run him. I think the format will be slow enough that a 2/4 on turn 4 is not, terrible.
I think this card's great. I hope to be playing lots of them in almost every single deck I make. I like drawing. I like drawing cards. I'd give it probably a solid 3 at the very least. 3? Yeah, I think it's probably between. It's not quite 3.5, but I'd give it a solid 3.
I mean, cycling is definitely something, and I guess you have to like put this in the context of Gate Crash having a gate in every pack. So people are going to have gates in their deck. It won't be like the other formats where there were many times you drafted a good deck and you just didn't have any gates.
Right. I'm expecting almost all decks to be tricolor, in which case you better have gates.
Yeah. Runner's Bein, 1 blue and a colorless for an enchantment. Enchant creature with power 3 or less. When Runner's Bein enters the battlefield, tap enchanted creature. Enchanted creature does not untap during its controller's untap step. I think this is a perfectly good removal spell. It's basically a 2-mana spell that kills something with power 3 or less. Granted, it doesn't prevent them from using abilities, so it doesn't really work on guild mages. But I'd say this is a solid 3 to 3.5.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd probably lean closer towards a 3. It's not by any means unconditional removal. And if the format ends up being very slow and it comes down to a lot of heavy hitters, then it's not going to do enough work. Right. But I can see it working in an aggressive deck. I can also see it working in a control deck.
I think a control deck with a lot of removal spells would still want to take this reasonably highly, just because if you have a lot of removal, you can use different removal spells for their 2-drop dork, and then save this for their 2 or 3 power evasive guy that they drop down on like turn 3 or 4 or whatever. Which is, I think, where this card is going to shine, is by taking out aggressive guys. Or I guess if you're getting swarmed, then stemming the tide. Trait Doctoring, 1 blue for a sorcery. Change the text of targeted permanent by replacing all instances of 1 color with another 1 basic land type with another until end of turn. Did I even read that correctly? Change the text of target permanent by replacing all instances of 1 color word. Oh, there we go. With another or 1 basic land type with another until end of turn. What a weird card. This reminds me of like way back when in Revised, when you had those cards that would let you change the color of something, and it just like didn't matter at all unless you had like a Northern Paladin or something.
Great. What was that card called?
I don't remember. There were 2 of them.
It wasn't the laces. It was something else.
Yeah, but there were 2 of them. One changed color, and then like one replaced like the color word in a card.
It was like sleight of mind or something.
Sleight of mind, yeah, or like something like that. And this has Cipher, so bonus.
It's still bad.
It's still bad. I'm trying to think like maybe there's some weird interaction that I'm missing, but the fact that this is sorcery means you can't even use it to like respond to like a colored based removal spell or something like that. I'm trying to think like in any way, shape, or form how this could be used for anything, and I'm drawing a blank.
I think it's both that and the fact that the effect only lasts until end of turn.
Yeah,
that it just kind of makes it scream useless.
this is maybe a constructed card, but I don't. Yeah, well, I'm going to give it a 1 to 0.
I'm going to give it a 0.
All right, solid 0 for Trade Doctrine. Okay, uncovered clues, 2 colorless and a blue for a sorcery. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal up to 2 instant and/or sorcery cards from among them, and put the revealed cards into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So this is, I guess, like the draw spell, or the digging spell for blue for this set. I mean, you get to look at 4 cards, but they have to be instant or sorceries to get put into your hand. So I'm going to say like 1.5. Maybe there's a deck that wants this more than that, but in general, it's not going to be desired.
Yeah, I'm going to give it a 1. I mean, the fact that you're limited on the number of cards you can actually put in your hand makes it like your max upside is draw 2, which means at best this is a divination.
Right.
At worst, it's an absolute blank. So I think it's just basically unplayable.
Yeah, I anticipate LSV making some sort of pun about uncovering stuff. All right, Windrake, 2 colorless and a blue for a 2/2 flyer. I think this guy has seen a lot of play and a lot of limited. I give him a solid 3.
Yep, he is the epitome of filler.
Yep. Never sad to put him in your deck. Never super happy to pick him really. So yeah, I think a 3 for this guy is perfectly reasonable. Okay, Awe for the guilds. 2 colorless and a red for a sorcery. Monocolored creatures can't block this turn. That seems pretty bad. 1 to 1.5.
Yeah, that seems pretty horrible. Probably a 0. I don't think I'll ever play it.
I'm trying to think like maybe if my opponent has like nothing but monocolored creatures, even then I'm not excited. So yeah, 1. All right, clear a path. 1 red for a sorcery. Destroy target creature with defender. I guess it's like a sideboard card. If you're really aggressive and they're very defensive and they have a bunch of walls that you need to get out of the way, it's fine. I would give it a 1.5. And then bring it in against the right type of deck. What do you think?
Yeah, I would rate just strictly sideboard cards as 1.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, we'll just call that sideboard 1 then. Okay, Maze Rusher, 5 colorless and a red for a 6/3 haste, and multicolored creatures you control have haste. Yeah, that just doesn't seem that great. By the time you're dropping 6 mana cards, do you really care if your other creatures have haste? I mean, maybe it's relevant, but I don't know how many more multicolored guys you're going to be playing after turn 6. So the benefit of this guy seems pretty marginal. I guess he can be 6 power out of nowhere, but I don't think he's on par with the other Maze guys. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he's worse. I'd give him a 2.
Yeah, I agree with 2. Possibility Storm. Now this card just looks cool, but I'll probably never actually understand what it does. 3 mana, 2 red for an enchantment. Whenever a player casts a spell from his or her hand, that player exiles it, and then exiles cards from the top of his or her library until he or she exiles a card that shares a card type with it. That player may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then he or she puts all cards exiled with Possibility Storm on the bottom of his or her library in a random order. Solid 1?
This is a solid 0. I mean, this is your stereotypical wall of text red card that basically is unplayable.
You keep undercutting me. We agreed the rating scale was 1 to 5, and you keep giving things 0.
Oh, I thought zeros were also an option.
I mean,
are zeros not an option?
Well, I don't know. They weren't originally an option, but I guess they are now. So yeah, Possibility Storm is solid 0. Punish the enemy. 4 colorless and a red for a instant. Punish the enemy deals 3 damage to target creature and 3 damage to target creature. Sorry, 3 damage to target player and then 3 damage to target creature. My version of the card sounded way better. But Punish the enemy, I think it's still fine. I mean, it's like an instant speed turn to slag that does a little less damage. It'll be playable. 2.5.
I'd actually give it a little higher. I'd probably give it a. I mean, considering you gave the four mana black one a 3.5, I'd give this at least a 3.
That's the 4 mana. Oh, sorry, the -4, -2 one. It's
Yeah.
one less mana though. Like to me, like 5 mana starts getting more difficult to cast.
Yeah, it's a little slower to do, but
Yeah.
it definitely it kills 3 power,
That's
which
true. That's true.
I think it's a little more relevant. I'd give it a 3.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess the 3 damage to target player is not completely irrelevant. All right, I agree with 3. Okay, Pyre Wild Shaman. Pyre Wild Shaman, I guess. 2 colorless and a red for a 3/1 with Blood Rush. Cost of 1 and a red to give a 3/1 to target attacker. And whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, if Pyre Wild Shaman is in your graveyard, you may pay 3 colorless mana. If you do, return them to your hand. So, I mean, he's like a reusable Blood Rush trick, basically, which seems pretty sweet. I mean, like you're going to be doing damage to your opponent, but 3 mana is like a decent amount to get the trick back. Later on in the game, once you've played out your hand, it probably becomes a lot better. And a 3/1 for 3 mana, or just 2 mana for the 3/1 is not like an unreasonable trick. So I give this guy, I guess, probably a 3, maybe a 3.5, probably a 3.
I feel like maybe I'm being a little optimistic. I want to live dream and blood
Yeah.
rush a first strike creature, and then bring it back that same turn, and then blood rush and a normal creature. Granted, that takes 7 mana, and that's a little unlikely, but
Yeah.
I think it'd be pretty awesome, and
Yeah.
the potential for that, I'd give it a 3.5. Probably overrated. Probably actually a 3, but I'm going to go with 3.5.
I mean, I guess the thing is too, you can just give it to an unblocked creature and pay 5 mana and just get it right back.
Yep.
I guess, right? So there's that. I think I'm going to stick by my 3 for this guy, though. I think he might be a little too slow to be better than that. Riot Piker, 1 and a red for a 2/1 first strike, and he attacks each turn of Fable. I mean, if Hellraiser Goblin was any indication, attacking each turn of Fable is not something that's compatible with a good card. Granted, 2/1 first strike for 2 mana is pretty solid. Like, there's not a whole lot that'll block it, in the first couple turns. But I almost feel like this card is basically just 4 damage to the face, and that's kind of it. What do you think?
Yeah, I would, unless you're in a very aggressive deck, so you're, again, Rakdos or Rakdos Boros, this is going to be difficult to make it into your deck.
Yeah. It's just such a liability. Like, I mean, it's just like Hellraiser Goblin. When it's good, but when it's bad, it's like real bad. Like you're throwing a full card away. I'd put this at like 1.5. Thoughts?
Yeah, I'd probably actually give it a 2.
A 2.
I think it'll make a deck a reasonable amount of time, and it'll make an aggressive deck a lot.
Yeah.
I can see it nice and cruel too. First strike is pretty solid.
Yeah, with Blood Rush. All right, Rubble Belt Ma'aka, whatever. 3 colorless and 1 red for a 3/3. Blood Rush, 1 red, and it gives 3/3 to a creature. Yeah, I mean, like, this guy seems pretty solid. 4 mana for a 3/3 body is reasonable, and the Blood Rush ability is pretty decent. He's no Slaughterhorn, but, I'd be perfectly fine running this guy in a Gruul deck. I give him a 3. Nah. Yeah, 3.
Yeah, I'd give him a 3. He does have 6 eyes.
That's true. Did you actually count the eyes? Because I only see 5 eyes.
I'm assuming it's even.
You're assuming there's an even number of eyes on both sides?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm not a Malka expert, but I guess that's a reasonable assumption. Yeah, the thing that I'm kind of like debating about, like, I say give it a 3. I think it's like fine at a 3, but it's a 4-drop, and like your 4, 5, and 6 slot can get pretty full pretty fast. I just remember with what was in Gate Crash, there was the 3/1 first strike guy, Vashino whatever.
Yeah.
And he was really good because he gave first strike with his Blood Rush, and you always wanted to take him, but you were always hesitant to just because you knew your 4-drop was going to get full.
Although to be fair, a 3/3 and a 3/1 first strike is effectively the same thing.
Right.
It's almost always going to kill it, and your guy's going to survive.
That's true. Yeah. Okay. I think 3's fair then. Smelt Ward Gatekeepers. Let's see here. This is 3 colorless and a red for a 2/4, and he has the standard. If you have 2 gates when he comes into play, you get an active treason, basically. So you gain control of a creature and bash with it. I mean, Active Treason was very playable in Gate Crash. I presume you will still be able to make aggressive decks. Will aggressive decks want to run multiple gates so that they can get this guy out on turn 4 and Active Treason something? I don't know. I'm actually not really sure where I put this guy.
I think this guy's fucking horrible. Oops,
Really?
I probably shouldn't curse. I think this guy's horrible. I think he's basically unplayable. I'd give him a 1.5 or 2. The problem is he doesn't have haste himself.
Right.
So in almost all ways, he's just worse than Active Treason.
I mean, he's better if you know, like on turn 4, you act something. I mean, he does that, and then you just get a 2/4 out of it, basically.
I guess, but I like Active Treason as a finisher.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, maybe, yeah. I could see giving this guy a 2, maybe a 2.5, but I think the most awkward thing about this guy is just the fact that you need gates, and gates are so awkward in aggressive decks. I just remember in Boros, I almost didn't want to run them because, you know, you'd be like, oh, do I play my gate or do I play my 2-drop? So yeah, 2.5, somewhere in there. Weapon Surge, 1 red for an instant. Target creature you control gets 1/0 and gains first strike until end of turn, and you can overload it. I mean, I guess giving all of your creatures first strike is pretty cute. This seems like a reasonable combat trick. Aerial maneuvers was okay. Like, it was playable. It wasn't amazing, but it was playable, mostly because of the first strike clause and the fact that it increased power by 1. The flying was occasionally relevant, and, you know, overload could be pretty sweet. I give this a 2.
I think it's a reasonable trick. The problem is there's just a lot of tricks in this format.
Right.
I think in most other formats, I'd probably give it actually a little higher, probably 2.5. But because of the number of kind of trick density, I'd probably give it a 2.
Yeah, I think 2's good.